Good morning, everyone. This is a quick harmonic demo for Insurity. Um, what is Harmonic? Harmonic is a work management platform. It allows for collaboration between AI workers and human workers. It's a novel take on how companies can get work done in their business. Okay, so let's start with the problem. So, what I heard from the client before designing the Harmonic platform was that they were in too many meetings. I think we can all relate to this. A lot of these meetings were, scope discussions, requirements gathering, and even regroups where key members of the project would lose context and have to have another meeting to talk about the meeting content of previous meetings. There was no project visibility, meaning that they couldn't even tell, how overutilized or underutilized different staff members were. Hard to know what projects can be delivered and when, um, and that's just because they didn't have good metrics around projects. Uh, they have multiple project management systems and project managers, and yet this was still a problem. There's also what we all experience in businesses where there's competing demands. Everything is urgent and important. Maybe one executive said, yes, this project's important. And then another, executive or senior leadership would say, no, no, we got to focus on this. And so there was all these competing demands. And so when you think about sort of like a capacity group that is meant to get work done, and you have all these different inputs from different people telling them where to go and how to be, it turns into a bit of a confusing situation. And this is extremely common in businesses. They also didn't have an AI strategy. They know that they wanted AI to help them out, but they weren't really sure how it can help them out, which is indicative of the maturity of AI and the industry's understanding of how to leverage it. Meanwhile, when you look at project management and you take a step back and you say, from a first principles perspective, what is project management? Where does it come from? Most modern project management is based on industrial era design, and that was basically stock imported directly into technology, and it suffers from some very critical issues. The first is Parkinson's law, which states that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. So this can be used both as a carrot and a stick. So as a stick, it's like we're going to shrink the deadlines and try to create a sense of urgency. And as a carrot, we add buffers and filler to create a sustainable work environment. In both cases, it's inefficient and has on the stick side, it creates a toxic work environment, and on the carrot side, it creates an environment where the business isn't competitive. It also suffers from Brooks' Law, which means this is, the mythical man month. This is about adding people late to a project makes it even later. So when you try to increase velocity and you add more people, you often actually make the problem worse, because more people means more coordination, slower ramp up, and diminishing returns. And then lastly, there's a management crisis, which is all about the fact that when you add more people, or as you're trying to manage projects, especially around due dates, um, and then you also add to it AI workers, the management complexity is just continuing to grow. And so let's demonstrate what that means here. So this is a nice little visual that explains what it's like as an organization grows in size. So if you have three people in an organization, there's only three communication edges or lines you can see here, right? And these bubbles represent people. When you get to four people, suddenly now there are six connection lines. And then when you get to five people, there's 10 connections. And so what this is showing is that as organizations grow, the number of communication edges between people is growing, um, uh, not exponentially. I think it's quadratically, but I don't remember exactly. But then when you get to 100 people, we're looking at almost 5,000 communication connections. And so the way that companies try to solve this is by creating divisions and hierarchical structures like you see here. but still the communication overhead is so very high that it becomes the norm for there to be miscommunication. It becomes the norm for things that should take a day to take a week, just because there's so much talking that needs to happen. The client that we're working with here had an estimated staff around 14,000. So that's 98 million connections, right, for a complete graph. Now, obviously, that's not the amount of actual connections that were taking place because of hierarchical structures, but it's to showcase the point that this problem is only getting worse as organizations grow. And so the part of the company that we were working with was the creative department. So they handle all creative for this massive company. And so they have tons and tons of requests coming in from different key stakeholders. And so once again, before any system was created, we took a first principles look and we said, okay, what actually is happening here? So the when you think about work management, you can see it as a system. We have inflows, stocks, outflows, and feedback loops. Um, and so uh, when we sort of like take a generic system, apply it to the world of the creative department for work management, you can see that a new project request comes in. They have a production unit that executes on the project and then they deliver it. And then internally, feedback loops of like public relations that really represents like the company's perception of the creative department, the leadership perception of the creative department, the perception of the people that get their projects delivered, how much do they like them. All of this has impact on their ability to deliver. When we look at its actual complexity, there's a lot more going on. There's many different types of requests coming in through different avenues. And these requests come in through different means. Sometimes it's a walk by to a project manager, and then sometimes it's a phone call from executive leadership that go into some kind of project management tool. Then there is this sort of cycle that you see here of like prioritization confusion and competing interests. Um, and so you have this kind of complex system going on just to ask for something to get done, right? To get work done. I need a new logo. And then suddenly it's like, you enter into this complex situation. So, how do we solve this? And from a first principles perspective, that's really where we started before a single line of code was written. It was all about making sure we were solving the right problem in the right way. So, there are four main solutions here. AI intake, meaning that now all future project work is collected through an AI system. Then there is automatic prioritization, where the AI system determines how the project should be organized. Then there's auto delegation, who should be doing the work. And then there's AI workers that collaborate with human workers to get work done. And so the AI intake system, eliminates requirements meetings. The automatic prioritization eliminates planning meetings. The delegation system uh, eliminates communication about who should be working on what and when. And then the AI workers increase capacity. So if you think about the solution here, it really solves the communication overhead problem, or at least greatly reduces it. And then it also ensures that the majority of people's time in production is actually on production rather than trying to figure out what they should be working on and when. And I think what's really novel here is this sort of addition to not only is it fixing sort of the system of work management, but also it's increasing capacity through AI workers. And so you need a way so that humans and AI can work together. So how does it work? There's a user. A user is a member of a portfolio. A portfolio has sponsors, it has goals, it has offers, and it has skills. So a sponsor is the requester of work, the key stakeholder. The goal is the portfolio goal, meaning like the production group has to have corporate goals that they're trying to march towards. Like, for example, if you're a creative department, you might want to ensure that um, branding is one of the key values of your division, right? Then you have offers, which is the type of work that you supply to your broader company, and then skills, like the type of skills that your work group represents. Maybe it's graphic design, copywriting, maybe it's cinematography. There's a lot of different skills that go into the creative department. So when a project comes in, it gets added to a queue rather than some sort of like, you know, due date scenario versus like date centric work. This is queue centric work, which is much more optimal than time based because it avoids Parkinson's law. Um, and once it's in the queue, it then moves into a workflow, and then work gets delegated to human and AI workers. So that's sort of a brief overview of Harmonic. Let's take a dive into the platform. This is Julian's account I created yesterday. Okay, so the work board is where employees actually see the things that they should be working on. They can also see their history. They can see all the projects that are currently in the queue. And you can see the scoring system at work here. It decides how important is a particular project in the grand scheme of things. So let's take a quick peek at how that works. I believe it's here. Yep. So for the creative department, they have sponsors and they have goals. So a sponsor is like all the different business units that can request work from the creative department. So they have like marketing, advertising, sales performance, culture and comms. And so we assign weights to these different organizations. Some key players in the organization have higher priority than others, but they also can't sort of, they can't take over all the production capacity. So they have limits as to like, even though they may be a higher priority, they should only be able to capitalize, say, 40% of the production unit. Then there's also the goals of the creative department: world-class brand, support advertising. And so when a new project comes in, the AI system looks at all of this information, looks at the type of project it is, and says, okay, given the priorities of the production unit and given the requester, what type of priority is this project? So it automatically fits. It automatically creates a score, which you can see here explains kind of how scoring works in detail. This is a quick demo, so I'm not going to go through all the little ins and outs of it. But the main thing is when someone creates a new project, they can select, who the stakeholder is, what type of service they need. Let's say that they need like uh, let's go with like the demo project here. And let's say that, we're just going to select some default values here. And this is a desired delivery date. This defines like when the stakeholder would really like the project to be completed. And then they enter into an AI consulting services where they can put in they can basically have a conversation with an AI around what the project goals are. And the AI will act as a consultant to help dig out and tease out sort of the details of the project. So let's see here. Create a really cool design for a shoe. And then the AI will think about it. It will create confidence scores as to like, does it feel like it actually collected enough information about the project? And so you do this back and forth, and it'll actually populate all these important details for the project. Let's see if I can get the confidence score higher without spending too much time here. Let's see here. Target audience. This is for young. Let's see here. Athletes, maybe. And then inspire them to reach for the stars. Right. All right. So we've got enough of a confidence score at this point to create the project. So I'll go ahead and create it. And then the AI system will take over. It'll figure out its project score, add it to the queue, negotiate its queue position, do all these really interesting things. And then once it's done, we can open up the project queue. And then we can see our new project was added here, inspirational shoe design. Okay, so for every offer that this organization supports, let's go look at the one we were just in, which is demo. There's a workflow associated with it. So the workflow is um, like a typical workflow that you could imagine. But let's go look at a more complicated one. Let's see here. I think I even have some. Let's do like this one. Yeah. So this the AI system will follow through this workflow. It'll say, okay, first it needs to go, to a concept phase, and then script writing, and then review. Uh, so if we look at the one that we were just looking at for demo, so it's going to go to an AI copywriter, then it's going to go to a concept phase, and then it's going to go to an AI designer, which will do the design work, and then it will end. And so this whole flow here is to demonstrate how you can have an AI worker only workflow process. And so when we go and we look at the workboard, actually, if we look at the queue, I believe, yep, you'll see that number 7 is gone, which is the one we created, which was the inspiration shoe design for young athletes. And that's because it was a fully automated workflow where the AI just handled everything. And we can actually see how the AI is doing work, what it's coming up with, and we can actually see some designs that it came up with as well. And this section here allows like humans to interact with the AI. This system has actually got it's a full featured work management platform. So I just kind of want to give you a little bit of a taste of it. There's a lot more we could go into. For example, we have different kinds of AI workers. We can add more. We can monitor our workers. We can define the different types of skill sets like that people belong to. We can assign AI workers to them. There's really a lot here, but the main thing just wanted to give you a quick taste of the harmonic system, and yeah, that should be enough for now. Thanks.